Listening is one of the most underappreciated skills in this new virtual environment. What can you do about it?
Yesterday, I had a really interesting conversation with a good friend about how to improve the communications in this new online meeting room environment that we're finding ourselves involved in more and more frequently. In the middle of that conversation, we decided, hey, why don't we hit the record button and see if we can't capture some of the lessons we've both learned about how to improve these communications. So we did. So let me introduce you to Betty Lochner. She's the owner of Cornerstone Coaching and Training. She's been a person that's taught me a lot about communications in general, and now she's turned her thinking and her writing to how to improve communications in these virtual meeting rooms that we're all attending. So let's drop in on that conversation and see if we can pick up a few tips about how to improve the communications when we're working virtually with one another these days. Stay tuned, it's coming right up. So Betty, maybe let's just have a conversation about that. I'd be curious if maybe we could begin with just what prompted you to write your list of tips, and then we'll go through the tips.
Sure. Well, obviously, we have all been thrown into a more virtual world. And funny enough, I've written a book called 52 Communication Tips that really all of these tips are adapted from. But it started occurring to me as I've been doing more and more online coaching. All of my clients that I normally would see in person, I'm seeing online. I'm doing meetings. We did a women's summit that was supposed to be live. We did it on Zoom. And I started noticing that we're using some of these habits that we have been using in person that need to be adapted to the virtual world. And when it really came to light, and what sparked me to write my last blog post about virtual listening was I was on Zoom with my little grandkids. So I have 3 grandchildren. At one point I said to my son, everybody's talking over everybody. I can't hear anything. And he said, well, half of us in the audience are under 3. And I said, well, yeah, but the other half aren't doing very good either. And so we kind of backed up and talked a little bit about some new adaptations, because when you are talking virtually, like we are now, you get cut off if you're talking over each other. And there's some ways that you can quite easily adapt how you're listening to make sure that you are adjusting to this new virtual world of communication that we are in now.
Well, clearly a critically important topic, because we're all real good at talking, but is the message getting through? So those listening skills are sort of prime for us making this new medium work. So let's just dive right into it. So if you were coaching me as somebody who's having some difficulty listening in this new environment, what are some of the ways that I can improve my ability to do that?
Sure. Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you are acknowledging everybody that's there and creating a safe and open environment. And you sort of set up some guidelines around how we're going to communicate. Talk in the chat box. I want to make sure everybody's heard. I'm going to call on people if I haven't heard from you, and kind of set up those expectations so that you create an equal opportunity and you don't have just a few people monopolizing the conversation, which is easy to do because we all like to talk and we're all not that great at listening. Or when we're listening, we're thinking about the next thing we're going to say. And so I really want to encourage people to, when you're listening, just stop multitasking, stop writing things down, stop doing whatever you're doing on the side, and just really listening to what they're saying, just like if they were right in front of you. Like they can see you, they can see that you're not looking, they can see, look at them just like you would be if they're just sitting a couple feet apart from you and you're having a one-on-one conversation. It's easy to get into this virtual audience like you're kind of invisible, but you aren't. People can still see you, they can hear you, and they can tell if you're listening. So you want to just demonstrate, model the behavior you want to see from the other people in the conversation by doing that, by stopping, by listening, by asking clarifying questions, by making sure everybody understood what was said, even saying a checkbox, say, that's a great point. Did everybody understand that point? Do we need any clarification? And making sure that you're really not moving through the material or the conversation too quickly.
Yeah, clearly eye contact is real important to feel like you're being heard. So any advice for our folks about how to do that using this new medium?
Right. I mean, make sure that you are looking into your camera as much as you can, like we are now. I mean, my screen is off to the right, but my camera is in front of me. And so make sure you're looking into the camera and watching all of your body language, not just your eye contact, which is probably the most important, but make sure you have a neutral contact. People can see you if your arms are crossed, if you're, shaking your fist, if your eyes are darting, if you're petting a dog, whatever you're doing, people can see that. So try really hard to have comfortable and consistent eye contact. And probably the biggest key to that is watch out for distractions. Try not to get distracted by what's going on around you, by other blocks that are coming up and other people are doing crazy things. I mean, there's all sorts of funny scenarios going on right now on Zoom. You see them all the time about people, the weird things they're doing online, because they have this illusion or this sense that they're not being watched, but you are. So watch your body language just like you should normally. Be neutral, be open, and have good eye contact. I mean, take the meeting and the conversation, even if it's with your 3-year-old grandson, take it seriously, because they can sense whether or not you're listening by the body language that you're using.
Yeah. So it seems to me hand gestures and other kinds of nonverbals are still appropriate in this environment. And I know you've thought about and written on before on appreciation. As a matter of fact, I've got your book on appreciations. So in terms of me convincing somebody that's speaking to me that I'm doing a good job listening, what are things I can do online to give them the assurance that their message is getting through and I'm hearing it?
Great. That's actually a great question, because we do need to acknowledge that we are listening. It's one thing to give good nonverbal cues like we've been talking about, but it's also really important to say things like uh-huh and nod, and even type in the chat, awesome point. I mean, you don't have to jump in and talk over somebody. If you're using the chat function well, you can just write, you can talk to each other on the side, like, that was a great point, Mike. Others should pay attention, or whatever it is, or zip in a link like he's talking about this and pop it in there, and ways to make sure that you are demonstrating you're listening because you're being active, you're actively responding, not just by using your nonverbal cues, but also using the tools available to you. And chat is a very powerful tool. So if you want to say in the comments, right on, I agree, one time this, without actually interrupting, because interrupting virtually is way more disruptive than it is in real life, because in most apps they kind of cut off the other person. You can only really hear one person at a time. So it's important to use those other ways to acknowledge people. Another idea is to make sure that people are appreciated. Don't forget to use your basic skills of appreciation and gratitude, which is like the most powerful communication and least often used skill that I teach, is just saying thank you and smiling. I mean, smiling is huge. When you're on there and you're just listening, smiling says to somebody without you saying anything that, oh, they're getting what I'm saying, or they're enjoying what I'm saying, because you're not scowling or frowning. And a lot of times those are just natural tendencies we have, like we may be concentrating, it comes out looking like a frown. So be self-aware of how you're looking online. Are you looking pleasant? Are you nodding your head? Are you saying, thank you for saying that? Or even in the chat, great point, thanks. And making sure that after somebody's done saying something, that you acknowledge you heard it. Like, that's a great story, thanks for sharing that. Or, it's so good to see your faces. I am so appreciative that everybody came today. Congratulations for being here. Just remember, little tiny positive affirmations can make a huge difference. We are an underappreciated culture. People are craving to be heard and appreciated. So little tiny micro things that you can say and do will make a huge difference. They're not hard. Just say, please, thank you, smile, put affirmative comments in the chat, add some value by adding a link or a comment, just little small things that says, I am listening and I am appreciating what you're doing. And then every time somebody's done, say, thank you for that. That was good. I have a couple questions, or whatever it is for the clarification, but make sure that you are acknowledging that you not only are looking like you're listening, but you really actively are listening, and you're transferring that active listening skill to a camera instead of a real life person, but just act like that camera is exactly who you're talking to.
Well,
That
it
way you
sounds like we're need to up the level of our awareness a bit. That we need to be conscious and send those signals non-verbally and verbally in a real face or in a face-to-face meeting. Those might come more naturally, but in this environment, it's probably good to raise our sensitivity and make sure we're actually trying to do that in an authentic kind of way. Seems like that's some advice.
exactly.
Yeah.
And just self-awareness around it, like just do a self body check at the beginning of your meeting and kind of like get in tune with, okay, where are my eyes, where are my hands, how am I going to manage or participate in this, and just kind of do a self-awareness check, because otherwise, as you said, we just kind of go on remote control and it doesn't translate as well for that online. Like right now I'm looking at a green light and I'm looking at, I'm pretending like I'm looking at you and giving you and the audience contact, which is a little bit awkward and weird. But the more you do it, the more you do something that's a little uncomfortable, the more natural it starts to become to you. And so you got to practice it, even if it doesn't feel normal or it feels a little bit uncomfortable. You kind of just got to step right through that, kind of modeling that behavior that you want to see. And you're training people to have a meeting in a little bit of a different format than what they're used to, so they don't just kind of go back to their old habits, which can, as produce a very inefficient kind of meeting, because you've got one person just talking and everybody else who knows what they're doing, that they're probably not talking. They're probably not paying any attention. They've got other work to do.
Sounds like in the grand scheme of things, really what we're doing here is we're all kind of stumbling through trying to define what a new normal looks like.
Exactly. And helping people understand that it's okay to do things a little bit differently. It's okay to explain what you're doing, and instead of just assuming everybody knows what you're doing, talk yourself through the pieces. And again, as you mentioned earlier, and I think in response when you first read my blog post, is like, maybe the number one thing we need to be working on is patience. Some of us
Tell
are
me
better
more.
at that than others, but remember, you're introverts. They're not always going to speak right up. They got to process a little bit. So give people some time. Silence is okay. And it's okay to say, gosh, Mike, I haven't heard from you. I just want to make sure that you've had an opportunity to speak if you have something to say. And if they say no, then that's fine, move on. But if you get a sense that they might have something to say, say, hey, go ahead, share it, please. And encourage people that may not feel comfortable jumping in, talking over somebody or putting someone out there in the chat, that it's okay. We're all going to try to hear everybody together.
Nice.
Meetings may go a little bit longer, but they're going to be more efficient and more productive meetings.
Nice.
You also want to remember, as I know you teach, make sure you still don't forget to have agendas, stay on task, make sure you tell people what the expectations are, how long you're going to spend on it. If you're having like a real work kind of meeting, you still want to have those parameters and ground rules around it, so they just don't go rogue and you end up talking for an hour and you didn't get like what you wanted to get done. And the meeting, like, here's the next steps, here's the assignments, just like you normally would do a well-run meeting. You don't want to forget those elements when you're online as well.
Raising these listening skills to awareness and sort of active implementation on our part seems like a really, really good thing to do. So maybe we could just kind of wrap this up with, is there one thing that you most want us to know about the challenges of being a good listener online?
I think the biggest challenge and the biggest area of growth for all of us is to be more self-aware, to build your self-awareness muscle a little bit and stop and kind of look at yourself. I mean, we have this opportunity that we don't normally have. Like, I can sit and I can see what I'm doing. We don't normally get to have a mirror in front of us like that. So take advantage of that and learn some new skills. Like, if you have trouble with getting your point across, or you feel like you're interrupting, it's okay to put in the chat box, hey, I have something to say, or let's all raise our hand if we have something to say. But to make sure that you're starting to build self-awareness in the areas that you may have some virtual listening gaps in, that maybe you don't so much in the real one-on-one world that most of us are used to. And think of those are, maybe pick two and write them down and say, you know, I'm going to get better at making sure my voice is heard, or I'm going to get better at making sure that everybody in my group is called on, or what kinds of things do you see? The other thing is, if you're recording your meetings, which you may want to just for practice, even if you don't need to, or maybe you're recording them because somebody can't view it and they go back and look at it, go back and watch a little bit of that recording.
Nice.
Watch yourself, watch how you facilitate, and learn from that.
And watch how you listen, obviously.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, thanks. So, Betty Lochner from Cornerstone Coaching and Training, thanks so much for sharing your ideas and your many years of experience now getting people to communicate better. So we're looking forward to talking to you more about these subjects in the future as we all struggle to make this online meeting environment transform from work to transform to opportunities to do work. So thanks very much. I sure appreciate
Thank
your
you. Thanks
time.
for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Y'all take care.
If you're the only one that you're hearing talking, maybe it's time to stop talking. Patience is going to be on your side here, telling people that you're bouncing back and forth, and it's okay for them to do that too. So a lot of it is not just watching, but telling people what you're doing. It's okay to slow the conversation down, and it's okay to have some silence on virtual meetings. So what I really want to make sure everybody understands is that it's really important to be authentic and real and have some self-awareness around this.